Right. So let's get started with our intro to scripting in Unity. Okay, so for this first tutorial, or for this first project, what we're going to try to do is we're going to just create a cube, and we're going to try to make it so that we can change the size of that cube by an amount that we specify, and we want it to change in size uh, with the speed that we specify. So we're going to change the size and change how fast the size changes. So that's the first task. And the idea with this being, let's start with something simple so that we can just kind of get a feel for the engine, kind of understand what are the different pieces and how do they fit together. And then once we've got that, we can go on to stuff that's a little bit more exciting. Okay, so if we want to create something that controls the size of an object, first we need an object. So do game object, create other, cube, which pops a cube into the world. Um, so, well, we just did something really basic. But it's actually kind of important to talk about what just happened. So we just created a game object. And what is a game object exactly? It's actually pretty important to understand what that is. So the game object is the highest level thing in the Unity engine. Everything that you create, everything that you interact with is going to be with game objects. Game objects are the meat of the engine. And that's what we've just done. We've just created our first game object. So one other thing we actually want to do is just to create a light. So game object, create other, directional light. And let's go ahead and move that out of the way. And so now we have a game object and a light, so we can see it. All right, so now we have the thing that we want to control. The next question is, how do we actually control it? And so the way that you create functionality inside of Unity is with something called a component. So over here, so if we click on the cube in the hierarchy, this is the hierarchy view, which shows all of our game objects. We'll talk about exactly how that works later on. But you can see we've got the cube, the light that we just created, and our camera. So if we click on the cube, we go over here into the inspector, which is this window over here. The inspector is going to show us a bunch of information. And each of these boxes right here, can be closed and opened, represent a component. And a component is just a piece of functionality that's attached to a game object. So the transform is a component that actually controls where the game object is in 3D space. It's how you're going to achieve all the movement-based stuff in Unity is going to be through the transform component. And so we've got this box collider component which handles physics, the mesh renderer which handles how the mesh actually gets rendered, obviously. And so that's what components are. So we're going to need to create a component that's going to change the scale like we want to. First though, we should look so you've got your list of components up here. So you can add a component to an object through this window or down here in the inspector with add component. And long story short, spoiler alert, we don't actually have, there isn't actually a component already built into Unity that's going to do what we want to do. So we need to create one ourselves. Okay? So, and the way that you do that is with a script. So let's go up here into assets, create C# script. Okay? And so we've created our first script. And scripts are just components. For our early understanding, think of a 1-to-1 ratio between scripts and components. You create a script, and then you attach, and that script becomes a component, and then you attach that component to a game object, and then through that you create what you want to create. So we're going to create a script, and we're going to call it scale changer, because that's what we want. That's the functionality that we want, and we're going to attach it to the game object. So scale changer, we hit enter. Okay, and then now something just happened. So when you hit enter, what Unity did is it actually created the file for you, and it added a bunch of custom stuff into the file. And we're going to talk about that in later videos about what that stuff actually is. But just key takeaway, you created a script, and the engine filled it in for you. And so now this is actually a component that can be attached to the game object. One other thing to note when you're creating scripts is you want to use camel case, as you can see how I did it here, and I'm going to show you why that is. So, but before we go into that, let's just go ahead and attach this to our cube, and then you can see down here, scale changer script. So that's a component, and then you can see the name of the script for that specific component. All right, so now we've got our place where we're going to put our custom functionality. It's attached to our game object, and we're ready to start actually creating custom functionality to make our game object change in size. But before, one other thing I want to cover before we're done here is what happens if you create a script that isn't camel case. So if we go over here, and we go assets create C# script, and we call it bad name. Okay, bad underscore name. Okay, and then we go back over here and we attach that. Let's go ahead and attach that to our cube as well. And you can see when we used camel case, it added spaces to the script because that's what Unity expected. When we used underscore, it just did the name. It's not a huge deal, but it's just a good convention to follow to make sure that you use this. Uppercase first letter, camel case throughout, and it'll just be better. So let's just go ahead and delete this bad name script because we don't need it. And then if you want to remove a component from a game object, you just right click on the components you want to remove. Oh, well, it's already been deleted. So, but we can just go over here and hit this little gearbox and do remove component. Okay, so we've got the basics of the engine that we want to deal with. So we've got game objects, which is the kind of high level thing where what things are going to happen to, and then we've got components, which is the way that we create our custom functionality, and then we've got, or which is the way that we create any functionality, which is the built-in functionality of Unity. And then if we want to create custom functionality of our own, we use scripts, and we created our first script. All right, and then in the next tutorial, we're going to start talking about how to actually create custom functionality inside of scripts. All right, thanks.